Yesterday, over on GhostbustersNews.com, we ran a feature on Ernie Hudson being honored at GalaxyCon Columbus. And in somewhat of an update, the full Q&A panel that Hudson took part in, it has just been uploaded online. And there are some pretty noteworthy Ghostbusters-related topics that do come up, from his time on the set of the original film to sharing his thoughts on the franchise's future. Now, in speaking about the classic 1984 film, as in previous interviews, Hudson touched on how, despite the studio not being the most inclusive, and by that he means his role being diminished ahead of filming and being left off of posters and other promotional material, his fellow co-stars, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and the late Harold Ramis, always had his best interest in mind, saying,
"From day one, we're all, offer their friendship, and they always sort of looked out for me because the studio was making certain roles, cutting things out. It was just, that part was a little weird. But I will say the guys were always very, very cool. And there were times when we do scenes and they would say, well, what about Ernie? And they throw on a line. Some of those lines are still, that last line in the movie, I love this town. That was like the guys going, well, Ernie should say something. Well, it's like, oh, well, just have him say whatever.
In talking about the original cast, Hudson would continue speaking on Harold Ramis and the impact he had on set.
Well, I think the reason you have Ghostbusters is because of Harold Ramis. I mean, obviously, Ivan, he's an amazing producer, director, and Bill Murray is just brilliant. There's no other word. It's just stuff that comes out of him I'm always sort of blown away by. But Harold was the guy who everyone respected enough to look past their own stuff. Mm-hmm. Suddenly it's like there's a blow up here and Bill can be, what
Bill?
do I say? Yeah, Bill can be Bill. And but Harold was Harold was always the voice of reason.
He's a rock.
That that if he said something, it was, everybody trusted Harold. And so whenever things would happen and people would sort of scatter, Harold was the one that sort of got everybody back to the table.
Continuing beyond the production of Ghostbusters, Hudson also shared the life lessons he learned from Ramis, which have stuck with him throughout his decades-long career.
And I think what I learned from Harold and what I've taken with me throughout my career is, just how do you conduct yourself? How do you deal with people? How do you, when you see people go, and you work with a lot of people, their moves would go here, you find that place where the calming, or it's not even calming, I'm not quite sure, but just how you conduct yourself.
You find the level.
You find a level. Yeah. How do you sustain? How do you live for another day? I've been doing this now for 60 years, acting on some level, theater or whatever, but how do you maintain a career with people who aren't necessarily balanced, who are probably high, and I don't know because right. They're just weird, but how do I keep my sanity? How do I keep myself from going off the deep end? And I think Harold was as perfect of an example of that as you could find.
Now, I teased this one at the beginning of the video, but finally, Hudson also shared his thoughts on the future of the Ghostbusters franchise, highlighting both its potential and the challenges of keeping the concept fresh.
Well, anytime something makes money, and it'll make money, not as much money as they wanted it to make, it has this fan base, but it's not like the Marvel billion-dollar movies. But it made enough money for them to, I'm sure, want to do another one. And it all depends on if they can keep finding something original, finding something. It's a different Ghostbusters. The mom is a Ghostbuster, which is something we couldn't conceive of in 1984.
Certainly not my mom. No way.
No, so it's a little different, but as long as they can be creative and it's relevant. But if not, what's the point? Because so many
Right.
of them, you watch movies and you go, why did they do that? I was in The Crow, and they keep trying to make their Crow, and I keep going, why?
Yeah.
Now, if you'd like to check out Ernie Hudson's full panel from this year's GalaxyCon Columbus, and yes, there is more Ghostbusters talk, we do have a direct link to it down below in this video's description. With that said, that's all I've got for you for this one. As always, subscribe. If you'd like to join up with Ghostbusters news, check out our Patreon page. A link to that is in this video's description, and we'll see you right back here next time.